The house was big enough to hold hundreds of people, yet it often felt empty. The walls were white, the floors shiny, and the windows tall, letting in sunlight that touched every corner. Still, there was a quiet sadness inside those walls. It followed the billionaire wherever he went, from room to room. Like a shadow he could not escape. He had built this life with hard work, long nights, and risky decisions. His name was known in business circles. People respected him, feared him, and admired his success. But none of that mattered when he walked past the small room at the end of the hallway. Inside that room lived his young son, a child who had not walked or spoken since the accident. The boy was paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors had used many words to explain it, but none of them brought comfort. Some said there was hope. Others said there was not. Over the years, the billionaire stopped asking questions. It hurt too much to hear the same uncertain answers again and again. Every morning, caregiver helped the boy sit near the window. From there, he could see the garden, the birds, and the sky. He liked to watch the trees move when the wind passed through them. He could not run or climb like other children, but his eyes followed everything with quiet attention. The only thing that truly held his focus was drawing. Paper, pencils were always within his reach. Sometimes he drew for hours without stopping. His small hand moved slowly but carefully. He did not smile much, but when he drew, there was a calm look on his face, as if the world finally made sense to him. The billionaire watched his son from a distance. He loved the boy deeply, but he did not know how to show it. Guilt sat heavy in his chest. On the day of the accident years ago, he had been busy. Too busy to notice certain things. Too busy to listen. That day had changed everything. Since then, he had buried himself in work. Meetings, deals, travel, anything to avoid the silence that waited for him at home. But no matter how much money he made, the silence always returned. One afternoon, the billionaire came home earlier than usual. A meeting had been canceled, and for once, he did not rush to fill the time. As he walked down the hallway, he noticed something strange. The boy was drawing again, but this time, he seemed tense. When the caregiver tried to look at the paper, the boy quickly pulled it closer to his chest. His breathing became faster. His eyes showed fear. This had never happened before. The caregiver stepped back, confused. She had worked with the child for years and had never seen him react like that. Normally, he was calm, distant, quiet. But now, his hands shook as he held the paper. The billionaire stopped walking. Something about that moment made his stomach tighten. He felt it before he understood it. A warning deep inside. Later that evening after dinner, the billionaire stood outside his son's room. The lights were dim. The boy sat alone, drawing again. The caregiver had stepped out for a short break. The father watched quietly. He noticed how the boy kept looking toward the door, as if afraid someone might come in. Each time he heard a sound, he paused and continued drawing. The billionaire cleared his throat softly. The boy froze. Slowly, he turned his head. His eyes met his father's. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. No words were spoken. They never were. The billionaire forced a gentle smile. He walked closer and sat beside his son. The chair felt too small under his weight. He did not know what to say, so he said nothing. The boy looked down at the paper. After a few seconds, the father reached out carefully. "Can I see?" he asked in a low voice. Not expecting an answer, the boy hesitated. Then, with shaking fingers, he pushed the paper forward just a little. The billionaire leaned in. At first, he did not understand what he was seeing. It looked like a house. Their house. The shape was clear. The tall windows. The long driveway. Even the garden was there. His heart began to beat faster. The drawing continued below the house. There was a dark square, almost hidden, drawn underneath. Inside that square was a small figure lying on the ground. The billionaire felt cold. The details were too accurate. The child had drawn something very specific. Something real. The father swallowed hard. "Where did you see this?" he whispered. The boy did not answer. He could not. Instead, he picked up another paper and turned it over. On the back there was another drawing. This one showed a door, a heavy door, and beside it, a symbol the billionaire had not seen in years. His hands began to shake. That symbol belonged to the past. A past he had locked away with money, silence, and power. A past no one was supposed to remember. The billionaire stood up suddenly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. The boy flinched. "I'm sorry," the father said quickly, sitting back down. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. His mind raced. How could his son know this? The boy had never left the house alone. He had been too young back then. Too young to understand unless... The thought scared him. That night, the billionaire could not sleep. He lay in his large bed, staring at the ceiling. The drawings played again and again in his mind. The house. The dark space. The symbol. He got up and walked through the halls. The house creaked softly under his steps. Everyone else was asleep. When he reached the far end of the house, he stopped. There was a door there, one he rarely noticed, one he had told himself did not matter. His hand hovered over the handle for the first time in years. Fear filled his chest, not fear of loss, but fear of truth. Behind him, somewhere in the house, a child slept quietly, holding a pencil in his hand, and without knowing it, he had just begun to tell a story that no amount of money could ever erase. The next morning, the billionaire could not shake the images from his mind. He tried to eat breakfast, drink coffee, and read the newspaper, but his thoughts kept returning to the drawings. He kept asking himself how his son, a child who had never left the house alone, could have drawn something so specific, so secret. He decided to go back to the room where the boy had been drawing. The caregiver was there, helping the child sit comfortably near the window. The boy held another sheet of paper tightly, his little hands trembling slightly. The billionaire approached slowly, not wanting to scare him. "I need to see your drawing," he said softly. The boy hesitated, then placed the paper on his lap. Staring at his father with wide eyes, the billionaire took a deep breath and leaned in. This drawing was even more detailed than the first. It showed the house again, the same dark square underneath, but now there were small figures around it. They looked like people, standing in specific positions, as if frozen in time. The symbol from before was repeated, smaller this time, near the corner. The billionaire's hands shook as he traced the lines with his eyes. He could not understand how a child could know about something that had been hidden for so long. A memory he had tried to bury was now being revealed in front of him. Through the eyes of a boy who could not even walk, the caregiver noticed his reaction and stepped back. She did not know what was happening, but she could tell that something serious had been uncovered. The billionaire remained silent, lost in thought, his mind racing with questions and fears. Finally, he spoke. "Where did you see this?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. The boy did not answer. He simply clutched the paper and looked away, his small chest rising and falling rapidly. The billionaire felt a mixture of fear and determination. He realized that he could not ignore this any longer. Whatever his son had drawn, it was important. It was real, and it might change everything. He called the caregiver closer. "I need you to stay with him. Do not leave him alone. And be careful with what you say. This is delicate." The caregiver nodded, though her eyes were wide with worry. She had never seen the billionaire so unsettled, so vulnerable. After she left the room, the billionaire took a deep breath and looked at his son. "We need to find out what this is. It's important. Can you show me everything you drew?" The boy nodded slowly, as if understanding that something serious was happening. He handed over all the drawings he had made in the past few weeks. The billionaire studied each one carefully. Each drawing added more detail to the dark square beneath the house. There were rooms, doors, symbols, and small figures. It was as if his son had recreated a secret hidden part of their home that even he had forgotten. The billionaire's heart pounded. He remembered that part of the house, long locked and abandoned. He had never let anyone enter it. He had thought it was safe. But now, the drawings suggested otherwise. He realized he had no choice. He had to investigate. He could not risk ignoring this. The symbols, the figures, the details, they were too precise to be random. Something was hidden, something dangerous, something from the past. He called his security team immediately. Lock down the house. No one in or out. I need to investigate a private matter in the house. Bring in a team to help me search, but make sure it's quiet and careful. The security team responded promptly. They arrived within the hour. The billionaire led them to the far end of the house, to the old forgotten door. His hand shook as he placed his palm on the handle. He had not opened this door in years. The memories it held were painful, dark, and complicated. He looked back at his son, who watched him silently from the window. The boy's eyes were intense, almost as if he was trying to guide his father to warn him. With great care, the billionaire turned the handle and pushed the door open. A cold, musty smell filled the air. The room inside was dimly lit, dusty, and full of old furniture covered in sheets. Cobwebs hung from the corners, and the floor creaked under his weight. He stepped inside slowly. The security team followed, scanning the area with flashlights. Nothing seemed out of place at first. Just old furniture, boxes, and forgotten belongings. But then he noticed a small trap door in the floor, partially hidden under a rug. He knelt down, heart racing, and lifted it carefully. Beneath the trap door was a small, dark basement. The air was damp and cold. It smelled like mold and something else, something metallic. He shined his flashlight down the stairs. The drawings his son had made were accurate. Everything matched. The security team descended cautiously, checking every corner. As they explored, the billionaire noticed scratches on the walls and faint marks on the floor. It looked like someone had been here, long ago, and left in a hurry. He felt a chill. This was the part of the house he had hoped no one would ever see again. The past he had buried was now staring him in the face. Suddenly, one of the security members called out, "Sir, you need to see this." He had found an old box, locked and chained. The box looked heavy and the chain was rusted, but intact. The billionaire knelt beside it, recognizing the symbols on the lock. They matched the ones his son had drawn. His heart pounded. The boy had seen this in his dreams, perhaps, or somehow felt it through his instincts. He had no way to explain it, yet he had drawn it perfectly. The security team tried to open the box, but it was stubborn. The billionaire, shaking, removed the chain and carefully lifted the lid. Inside, there were old documents, photographs, and a small leather-bound notebook. Everything was yellowed with age, but preserved. The images on the photographs made his stomach churn. They showed people, unfamiliar faces, and some that he recognized from his past. There were scenes of arguments, confrontations, and something that looked like a secret meeting. He realized that what his son had drawn was not just imagination, it was a real hidden part of his life, long forgotten or ignored. His mind raced with questions. How did the boy know? Why now? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do next? He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. For years, he had believed that money could protect him from anything, that his success could erase his past. But standing in that dark basement, he understood that some truths cannot be hidden. Not from a child, not from anyone. He looked at the notebook. The first page contained a handwritten letter, folded carefully. The handwriting was familiar, though faded. He opened it slowly. As he read, his eyes widened. The letter described events that matched the drawings perfectly. People, places, symbols, and actions were all documented in detail. It was a confession of sorts, a record of things he had hoped would never resurface. His hands trembled, could not believe what he was seeing. The past had returned in the most unexpected way, through the innocent hands of his paralyzed son. At that moment, he realized that he could not handle this alone. He needed help, and he knew exactly who to call. He picked up his phone and dialed the local authorities. The voice on the other end answered promptly. "This is the police station," the voice said. He took another deep breath. "I need to report something. It's urgent. I need officers to come immediately." The voice on the other end did not hesitate. "We'll send a team right away. Can you tell me your location?" Gave the address, his hand still shaking. He did not tell them everything over the phone. He only said that it was urgent, that it involved a potential crime from the past, that immediate assistance was required. The call ended, and he turned to look at the basement. The security team stood silently, sensing the gravity of the situation. Outside, the wind howled, and the house seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt a mixture of fear and hope. Fear for what was to come, and hope that the truth, however painful, could finally be faced. And somewhere, upstairs, his son continued to watch, small hands resting on the window ledge, as if he knew that his drawings had begun a chain of events that no one could have predicted. The police arrived quickly, their sirens muffled by the large trees surrounding the mansion. The billionaire met them at the door, trying to explain in simple words what had happened, without revealing too much that might alarm them prematurely. He led the officers through the quiet hallways to the old room at the far end of the house, where the trapdoor had been discovered. The boy watched silently from the window, his small hands gripping the ledge. He seemed calm but alert, as if he understood that something very important was unfolding. The officers descended carefully into the basement, flashlights cutting through the darkness. They examined the trapdoor, the floor, and the boxes that had been hidden for years. One officer, the senior detective, looked up at the billionaire. "Do you have any idea what's in here?" he asked. The billionaire shook his head, his throat tight. "Not exactly," he said. "But I know it's important, my son. He drew it. He saw it somehow. I don't know how, but he's been trying to tell us." The detective's eyes flicked to the boy, who sat quietly in the room above. "That's unusual," the officer said carefully, choosing his words. "But if there's evidence here, we'll handle it." They turned their attention to the locked box. Using careful tools, they managed to open it without damaging the contents. Inside, they found the old documents, photographs, and the leather-bound notebook that had terrified the billionaire the day before. The detective opened the notebook, first, flipping through pages filled with careful handwriting. It seemed to detail events from years ago, events that had been carefully hidden, involving people who had long since disappeared from the billionaire's life. There were notes about secret meetings, financial transactions, and something that seemed darker, almost criminal. The billionaire looked away for a moment, trying to steady himself. "I never wanted this to come out," he said quietly. "I thought I could bury it with time, with money, with silence. But we found it anyway." He gestured toward his son. Somehow he knew. The detective nodded. "Children are more observant than we give them credit for," he said. "And sometimes they sense things adults can't explain." One of the officers pointed to a photograph. It was of a man the billionaire recognized from long ago, someone who had been involved in a business conflict that had ended badly. The photograph showed the man with papers spread on a table and people around him, all looking tense. The billionaire's stomach turned. "That man. He disappeared years ago," he murmured. "We never found him, never knew what happened." The detective carefully placed the photograph down. "If these documents are real, we may be able to find answers now," he said. "But we'll need to verify everything. This will take time." The officers examined the basement. The billionaire's mind wandered to his son. The child had been so quiet, so still, yet his drawings had uncovered all of this. It was astonishing, almost impossible to believe. He knelt at the trapdoor and whispered, "You were trying to tell us, weren't you?" The boy nodded slightly, his eyes wide and serious. He didn't speak, but the expression on his face said everything. He had seen the truth and had tried to guide his father to it. The detective called the team together. "We need to catalog everything here," he said. "Photographs, notebooks, documents. We'll take them for further investigation." The billionaire watched as his son's drawings were matched with the items in the box. Every detail seemed to correspond perfectly, as if the child had a map of the past in his mind. It was unsettling, but also deeply moving. He realized that his son's ability to see things in a unique way was a gift, even in the midst of the fear it brought. Later, back in the living room, the billionaire sat with his son and the caregiver. The police had taken the documents for analysis, promising to return once the investigation was complete. The house was quiet again, but the tension was still thick in the air. He looked at the boy, his heart heavy with emotion. "You've shown me things I didn't want to see, but I needed to," he said softly. "I can't explain how you knew, but I am so proud of you." The boy looked up at him, blinking slowly. There was a sense of relief in his eyes, as if the weight of keeping the secret had been lifted. The caregiver smiled gently. "He has always been special," she said. "You just never realized how much he could perceive. Sometimes children notice what adults overlook." The billionaire nodded. "Yes. And now I have to face what I've tried to forget. I can't let this remain hidden any longer." Over the next few days, the police returned multiple times to question him, examine the documents, and cross-check details. Each visit was emotionally exhausting but necessary. Every piece of evidence brought back memories he had tried to suppress, but also brought clarity. He began to understand the importance of confronting the past rather than avoiding it. Through it all, his son remained at the window, observing quietly. Occasionally, he would bring out a drawing, showing small details of the basement or the people involved. It was as if he was guiding the investigation, piece by piece, helping to uncover what had been hidden for so long. The billionaire realized that his son had not only revealed the past, but had also given him a chance to correct mistakes, to make things right. He felt a deep gratitude, a bond stronger than he had ever felt before. Despite the paralysis, despite the silence, the boy had found a voice in his drawings that no one could ignore. One evening, after a particularly long day with the investigators, the billionaire sat with his son, holding his small hands. "You've done something incredible," he said quietly. "You've helped us see the truth, and I promise I will make sure it is handled correctly." The boy rested his head against the window, gazing outside. He did not speak, but there was a sense of peace in his demeanor. He had shared his secret, guided his father, and helped uncover what had been hidden for so long. The billionaire, meanwhile, felt a new resolve. He understood that his wealth and power could not erase the past, but honesty, courage, and love could create a future where mistakes were acknowledged and corrected. And that realization, he knew, was the most valuable lesson he had ever learned. Days passed, and the investigation continued. Each new piece of information making the billionaire feel a mixture of fear, regret, and hope. The police were thorough, questioning every person who had been involved in past events, analyzing every document, and following leads that had been hidden for years. Yet, no matter how serious or complicated the case became, the billionaire's thoughts always returned to his son. The child remained a quiet presence in the house, drawing whenever he could, sometimes for hours on end. The drawings were not always detailed plans of hidden rooms or documents. Sometimes they were simple sketches: the garden, the birds outside, or the sunlight streaming through the tall windows. But even in these simple moments, there was a clarity and focus that seemed extraordinary. It was almost as if his mind processed the world in layers adults could not see. One afternoon, the billionaire sat beside his son, watching him draw. He wanted to understand, to connect, but words seemed inadequate. He had never been good at showing emotion. Business deals, negotiations, and presentations had always come easily. But expressing love, guilt, or hope had never been simple. The boy handed him a drawing without saying a word. On it was the trapdoor in the basement, exactly as it looked now. But there were markings around it that indicated something unusual. The billionaire studied it carefully. The boy's understanding of shapes, distances, and angles was uncanny. It reminded him of the notebooks and photographs the police had taken, a silent bridge connecting past events to present reality. "How do you know all this?" he asked softly, almost to himself. The boy did not answer. He simply looked at his father, his dark eyes calm and serious. The billionaire realized that words were not necessary. The boy's drawings were communication in themselves, and through them, he understood more than he could say. That evening, the police returned with updates. Some leads had been confirmed. Others were still uncertain. The documents from the basement had revealed names, dates, places tied to an old case that had been closed for years without explanation. But now, everything was surfacing again. The billionaire felt a weight on his shoulders, the gravity of accountability pressing down on him. He could no longer pretend the past was irrelevant. The lead detective looked at him with a serious expression. You're cooperating fully, and that's important. But you need to prepare yourself. Some of what's coming might be shocking, even to you." The billionaire nodded, swallowing hard. He knew the warning was true. He had spent years hiding, covering, and avoiding, and now all of it was being revealed by a child's drawings. Simple, yet precise, guiding them toward the truth. After the officers left, he walked through the house, past the familiar hallways and windows. He reached the room where his son sat, pencil in hand, drawing again. For a moment, he simply watched. There was a strength in the boy, a quiet determination that contrasted sharply with his own turmoil. It was humbling, and it made him realize that courage came in many forms, not only from wealth, power, or influence. He knelt beside his son. "You're helping us," he said quietly. "I don't know how, but you're helping. And I want you to know, I am so proud of you." The boy glanced up and handed him another sheet. This one showed people moving around the basement. Small figures that seemed to indicate how they interacted, where they stood, and what they did. It was almost like a map of memories, captured in pencil strokes. The billionaire studied it carefully, recognizing small details he had overlooked. Every line, every angle, told a story. Later that night, as the house settled into silence, he found himself alone in the basement. The police had taken the documents for further verification, leaving him with only the space and the memories that lingered there. He walked slowly, touching surfaces, remembering what had happened years ago, when mistakes were made, when trust was broken, and decisions had been taken that he now regretted. The shadows in the corners seemed longer than they should have been, the air heavier, but there was also clarity. He understood that running away from the past had never helped. Facing it, confronting it, and being honest, even when it hurt, was the only path forward. In the days that followed, the police returned with new information. Some individuals connected to the old events were located. Some were willing to speak, others resisted. Each interaction was challenging, sometimes frustrating, but slowly, the puzzle began to take shape. The billionaire was forced to confront uncomfortable truths, to admit complicity, and to accept the consequences of choices he had made in haste. Anger or fear. Through all this, his son continued to draw. Sometimes he stayed near the window. Other times, he sat beside his father. Each drawing became more precise, more meaningful. And the billionaire began to rely on them not only for information, but for guidance. It was as if the child's perspective, untarnished by ambition or greed, provided clarity that adults often missed. One evening, after reviewing several new documents, the billionaire sat beside his son and said softly, "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown me these drawings. I might have ignored the truth forever." The boy looked up, blinking slowly. There was no need for words. The connection between them was evident, a bond strengthened by trials, discovery, and trust. The caregiver, observing from a short distance, whispered, "He's extraordinary. He sees things in ways adults cannot. It's as if he knows what is important, even without understanding all the details." The billionaire nodded. "Yes, and he's teaching me something I never thought I would learn. Courage, patience, honesty, all from a child who cannot speak, who cannot walk, yet speaks more clearly than most people I know." Over time, the investigation moved forward. The police verified the documents, connected the dots, and uncovered hidden truths that had long been buried. There were uncomfortable confrontations, apologies, and reconciliations. Each step was difficult, but necessary. And through it all, the billionaire never left his son's side. He recognized that the child's perspective, his drawings, and his presence had not only revealed the past, but had also guided them toward resolution. One afternoon, as the sun poured through the tall windows, the billionaire knelt beside his son. "You've changed everything," he said. "Not just for me, but for everyone affected by the past. You've helped us face the truth. And I promise, I will make sure nothing like this ever happens again." The boy smiled faintly, resting his head against the window ledge. His small hands continued to draw, capturing details that adults often missed. The billionaire watched him, filled with a sense of hope, pride, and profound gratitude. In the quiet of the house, in the midst of shadows and memories, a new understanding had emerged, that courage and insight could come from the most unexpected sources, and that love, patience, and trust could heal even the deepest wounds. The investigation finally reached a turning point. Weeks of careful verification, questioning, and cross-checking had begun to yield results. The documents, photographs, and notebook that had been hidden for years revealed the truth. There were mistakes, betrayals, and choices that had consequences, some of which had remained unacknowledged for far too long. Yet, alongside the difficult discoveries, there was also a path toward resolution, accountability, and healing. The billionaire walked through the house early one morning, the quiet stretching around him like a soft blanket. The sun streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the familiar rooms in golden light. Despite the clarity the investigation had brought, a part of him still felt heavy with guilt. He thought about the years he had spent running from the past, the moments he had neglected with his son, and the silence that had settled between them. He found his son in the usual spot, near the window, drawing quietly. Today's sketch was different. It was not of the basement, the hidden box, or the documents. Instead, it showed people standing together, holding hands, and a small sun rising above them. There was a sense of peace in the lines, a sense of hope that had been absent in the previous drawings. The billionaire felt a lump in his throat. He knelt beside the boy, his hands trembling slightly. This is beautiful," he said softly. "It shows something I needed to see. It shows that even after all the darkness, there can be light." The boy looked up at him, blinking slowly, as if understanding the weight of his father's words. He did not speak, but the expression on his face said everything. Acceptance, reassurance, and trust. The billionaire took a deep breath. He realized that this journey had not only revealed secrets, but had also transformed him. He had learned to listen, to pay attention, and to value the quiet wisdom of someone he had underestimated for too long. His son, despite the limitations of his body, had become a guide, a teacher, and a source of courage. The police returned once more, this time with final updates. The individuals connected to the past events had been located, and statements had been taken. Some had offered apologies, others had provided clarifications, and a few had faced legal consequences. The case was not only solved, but also understood in a way that brought closure to those involved. The billionaire worked closely with the authorities to ensure everything was handled correctly. His wealth and influence, once used to hide or avoid, were now tools for justice, accountability, and making amends. He realized that power without responsibility was empty. But power guided by integrity could create meaningful change. Throughout this period, his son remained his silent partner. Each day, the child's drawings helped organize thoughts, recall details, and clarify connections that adults might overlook. The process was slow, meticulous, and emotional, but it was necessary. And through it all, the bond between father and son grew stronger. Built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. One evening, after a long day of meetings with the police and reviewing documents, the billionaire sat beside his son in the room filled with drawings. The boy handed him a fresh sheet depicting the mansion from above, the garden, and the sun shining brightly. There were no hidden spaces, no secret symbols, only warmth, light, and peace. "I think this is the first time you've drawn something like this," the billionaire said, a soft smile on his lips. "It feels happy, hopeful." The boy looked up, his dark eyes meeting his father's. There was a faint smile, small but genuine. It was a smile that spoke of triumph, understanding, and a quiet satisfaction that things were finally becoming right. The billionaire held his son's small hand. "You've taught me so much," he said. "You've shown me the truth, helped me face it, and guided me to do the right thing. I don't know how to thank you enough, but I promise I will protect you, guide you, and never let you face the world alone." The boy rested his head against the window, breathing softly, content in the knowledge that he had made a difference. For years, he had observed, absorbed, and expressed in silence. Now, he had not only revealed the hidden truths, but it also helped bring peace and justice. The billionaire realized that the past, no matter how painful, could be transformed into lessons for the future. He understood that mistakes could be acknowledged, wrongs could be corrected, and love could guide every step forward. In the days that followed, life in the house began to settle into a new rhythm. The investigators had finished their work, the documents were safely archived, and the mansion felt lighter, freer. The billionaire spent more time with his son, listening, observing, and engaging in ways he had never done before. The boy's drawings continued, but now they reflected joy, curiosity, and hope rather than secrets, fear, or hidden warnings. The father and son shared quiet moments together, watching the sun rise, drawing side by side, and speaking in gentle tones about everyday things. The billionaire discovered the beauty of simplicity, the strength in patience, and the power of presence. He learned that connection, love, and understanding were far more valuable than money, influence, or success. One morning, the billionaire led his son to the garden. The air was fresh, the birds singing, and the sunlight warm on their faces. He helped his son settle near a flower bed, handing him pencils and paper. "Draw anything you want today," he said, smiling. The boy began to sketch, this time with complete freedom. The lines were light, playful, and full of life. He drew flowers, trees, birds, and even a small figure holding hands with another figure. It was a simple representation of happiness, trust, and family. The billionaire watched, feeling a sense of peace he had not known in years. He realized that life, despite its challenges and secrets, could be full of beauty and meaning when guided by love and honesty. His son, in his quiet way, had shown him the path as the sun set. Casting golden hues across the garden, the billionaire whispered softly, "Thank you for showing me the way. You are my courage, my guide, and my joy." The boy looked up, a small smile gracing his face. For the first time, words were unnecessary. The bond between father and son, forged through trials, secrets, and understanding, spoke louder than anything else could. And in that moment, surrounded by light, peace, and love, the billionaire understood that the past could be faced, the present embraced, and the future welcomed with hope. All because a small child, silent and paralyzed, had chosen to communicate through his drawings, revealing a truth that could not be hidden, and teaching a father the most important lessons of all. The days that followed brought a new rhythm to the mansion, one that was quieter, more peaceful, and filled with small moments of connection that had long been absent. The investigation had ended, the documents were secured, and the truth had been revealed. Yet, the lessons it brought lingered, shaping the billionaire's heart and actions in ways he had never anticipated. Every morning, he would walk through the house to the room at the far end of the hall, where his son sat with pencils and paper. Sometimes the boy drew the garden, the sun shining on the flowers, or the birds perched on the window ledge. Sometimes he drew images of the house, the rooms, or figures representing family and friends. Every drawing carried meaning, insight, or emotion, and every drawing reminded the billionaire that communication came in many forms, even without words. One morning, the billionaire knelt beside his son, looking at a new drawing. It was of two figures, one large, one small, standing together beneath a large tree. The tree's branches stretched wide, providing shelter and shade. There was a sense of safety and trust in the lines, something that the billionaire felt deeply. He realized that his son's drawings were no longer just revealing the past, they were teaching him about the present and the future. "You're showing me so much," he said softly. "Not just about what happened, but about how to live now, how to care, how to be present, how to love." The boy glanced up, a faint smile on his face. It was a smile that spoke of understanding and patience, of guiding without insisting, of teaching through quiet observation. The billionaire spent more time with his son than he had ever done before. They explored the garden together, read books side by side, sometimes simply sat in silence, watching the world outside the windows. In those quiet moments, he learned the value of presence, of simply being there. without rushing or avoiding. Evenings became a special time for them. After dinner, the child would draw while the billionaire sat nearby, reflecting on the day's events, reading, or sometimes just holding his son's hand. The boy's drawings evolved, becoming lighter, filled with images of hope, family, and nature. They no longer contained hidden warnings or reminders of the past. Instead, they celebrated life, resilience, and trust. The billionaire began to notice changes in himself. He was calmer, more patient, and more aware of the people around him. He listened more carefully, observed more deeply, and appreciated the small details that often went unnoticed in his busy life. He realized that wealth and success were empty if they did not come with love, empathy, and understanding. One afternoon, he brought a large sheet of blank paper to his son in the garden. "Draw anything you want today," he said. "No rules, no expectations. Just your thoughts and imagination." The boy's eyes lit up. He began to draw quickly, capturing the flowers, trees, birds, and even a small figure standing beside another figure. It was playful, joyful, and full of life. The billionaire watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He thought about the long journey they had taken together from fear, secrecy, and pain to clarity, honesty, and connection. He understood that his son's silence, his patience, and his extraordinary perception had guided him through a transformation that no wealth, no power, and no business success could ever achieve. Even the caregiver noticed the change. She smiled softly one morning as she watched them. "He's remarkable," she said, "and you've both grown together in ways that are rare. What he's teaching you goes beyond words." The billionaire nodded, acknowledging the truth in her observation. Weeks turned into months, and the mansion, once filled with shadows of fear and secrecy, now felt warm, welcoming, and alive. The billionaire dedicated himself to being the father his son deserved: attentive, patient, and loving. He involved himself in the child's daily life, guiding, supporting, and celebrating his small achievements. Every drawing became a moment of communication, a bridge between their hearts, and a source of mutual understanding. One evening, as the sun set and cast golden light across the room, the billionaire looked at his son's latest drawing. It was a depiction of their family, complete with the garden, the mansion, and the figures holding hands. There was a sense of peace, completeness, and joy that filled the page. The billionaire felt tears in his eyes. For years, he had chased success, avoided mistakes, and buried truths. Now, through the quiet and thoughtful drawings of his son, he had discovered the essence of life itself: love, connection, and understanding. He knelt beside the boy and whispered, "You've taught me more than I ever thought I could learn. You've shown me the power of observation, the strength of patience, and the beauty of love without conditions. I will never forget this, and I will carry it with me every day." The boy rested his head on the window ledge, smiling faintly. Words were not needed. The connection between them spoke louder than any conversation could. The billionaire understood that the journey they had taken together, the trials, the discoveries, and the quiet revelations had transformed him in ways that would last a lifetime. The mansion, once a place of emptiness, now echoed with the quiet joy of discovery and connection. The billionaire knew that the past, though painful, had led to growth. The present, filled with love, patience, and trust, was a treasure. In the future, guided by understanding, compassion, and the quiet wisdom of a child, was bright with possibility in the quiet moments. As the sun set and the shadows softened, the billionaire realized that true wealth was not measured by money, power, or possessions. It was measured by love, connection, understanding, and the courage to face the truth. And through his son's drawings, he'd found a wealth that could never be taken away, a wealth of heart, spirit, and soul. Together, they continued their days with a sense of calm and hope. The boy drew, the father observed, and the house, once silent and heavy, was filled with the gentle rhythm of life, laughter, and love. And in that harmony, the billionaire discovered the most profound lesson of all, that even the smallest, quietest voice can reveal truths that change everything, and that love, patience, and understanding are the greatest gifts any parent can give or receive.